What if we woke up tomorrow and Republicans were the ones fighting for bigger government, labor unions, and civil rights? What if the Democrats were the party arguing for lower taxes, less government and gun rights, and a stronger stance on immigration? You probably think somebody hacked the political system, but here's the crazy part. Some of these positions used to be held by the opposite party. So what happened? Did Republicans and Democrats literally switch sides? Nah, not exactly. But American politics have changed so much in the past 150 years that if you took a Democrat from the 1860s and dropped them into the current Democratic Party, they would not recognize it. And the same goes for Republican. But let's imagine for a second that Republicans and Democrats actually did switch sides. What would America look like? I mean, more importantly, how did we get to the political divide that we're at today? Let's start with something that most people don't even realize. The Republican Party is actually younger than the Democratic Party. The Democrats go all the way back to the 1820s when Andrew Jackson and his political movement developed it. The Republican Party wasn't created until about 30 years later in the 1850s. And one of the biggest reasons they formed was actually slavery. The Republican Party brought together people who opposed the expansion of slavery into new American territory. And eventually, Abraham Lincoln became president as a Republican, which led to the Civil War. Now, obviously, politics back then was not the same as politics now. The Democrats had a strong base in the South, while the Republicans became associated with the Union and eventually emancipation. And after the Civil War, Republicans became the dominant party in most of the North. But here's where shit gets complicated. Because being a Republican in 1865 does not automatically mean that you believe everything that modern Republicans believe today. And being a Democrat in 1865 does not mean that you will fit perfectly into today's Democratic Party. Coalitions that changed a lot. Now fast forward to the early 1900s. America is still industrializing. Factories are exploding in size. And while millions of people move into the cities and workers deal with terrible conditions, a new political argument starts to become very important. How much should the government regulate big businesses and protect its workers? This is where Democrat Woodrow Wilson began moving towards more of an active federal government. Then you get Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s. Now the Great Depression hits. Unemployment explodes and banks collapse. And now Roosevelt's Democratic Party responds with the New Deal. And the federal government becomes way more involved in the economy. Programs are being created to provide jobs, financial assistance, social security, and protection for workers. And that changed the Democratic Party. It started attracting a huge coalition of workers, labor unions, immigrants, urban voters, and eventually a lot of black voters. Meanwhile, Republicans become way more friendly with businesses and associated with limited government intervention. This is where the parties start to look a little more like the ones that we see today. But we're not there just yet, because now this is where everything starts to get a little more interesting. Civil rights. For decades, the Democratic Party still had a huge Southern wing, and Southern Democrats weren't really aligned with the liberal Democrats up in the North. Shit, in fact, many Southern Democrats were deeply conservative when it came to race and segregation. So you had something that seems almost impossible. From today's perspective, there were conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans, and that was normal back then. But the country started to change. The civil rights movement grew, and black Americans started to demand equal rights. So the federal government became more and more involved with the fight against segregation. Democrat President Lyndon B. Johnson signed a major civil rights legislation back in the 1960s. And that's what created a huge political realignment. Tons of white Southern voters that traditionally voted Democrat started to lean more Republican. But it wasn't just one giant switch. It happened over decades. You had some people changing parties. Some stayed Democrats but leaned more conservative. Some stayed Republican but leaned more liberal. Different groups moved at different times, but by the end of the 20th century, the two parties became way more ideologically separated, which brings us to today's weird question. What if they actually did switch? Imagine today's Republicans having political views and policies that modern Democrats have, or Democrats having political views and policies that modern Republicans have. So now Democrats are the party of limited government and Republicans are the party of more government programs. Alright, so now imagine turning on the news tomorrow morning and the Republican commentator says, "We need the government to make sure workers have better wages." And the Democrat replies saying, "Nah, the government need to stay out of our lives." You probably think everybody done lost their mind. But the thing is, those arguments aren't inherently Republican or Democrat. They're just political ideas. Plus, a political party isn't just one person. It's millions of people who don't always agree. You can have a Republican that wants more government spending and a Democrat who owns hella guns. A conservative who supports environmental protection and a liberal who don't even like certain government programs. Politics don't fit perfectly into two boxes. But our political system forces many people into two teams. And once you're on a team, you start to defend that team. Even when you don't even agree with everything that team does. You might hate a politician, but you vote for them because you hate the other one way more. So if Republicans and Democrats actually switch parties tomorrow, Americans will probably change their opinions on parties while still keeping their underlying beliefs. I mean, think about it. If you believe something is good just because your side supports it, then what happens when your side doesn't support it anymore? That can be a really uncomfortable question because it means sometimes people aren't really choosing ideas. They're just choosing the team, and that team tells them what ideas they're supposed to like. But there's also a bigger lesson here because the Republican Party of 1860 and the Republican Party of 1960, they ain't the same party. And the same goes for the Democratic Party. Political parties evolve because America evolves. New generations grow up and different groups gain political power. And eventually, the political coalitions change too. So the Republicans and Democrats really switch sides? Not really. It was a slow, messy, political realignment that happened over decades, generations. A century ago, the two parties' priorities were completely different than what they are right now. So just remember, American politics have been changing for the past 250 years almost. So what would make anybody think that it's gonna stop changing now? Let me know what video y'all want me to do next. If y'all got a specific idea or specific question that y'all want me to tackle, get through that shit, make a video about it, I'm gonna do it. Other than that, I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Let's get it.